Welcome to episode 5 of Nearsighted Podcast. I'm Brandon, and with me is my co-host, Big John Eisner. How you doing, John?
I'm good. I'm much better than I'm sure that the X amount of players that are on the WVU football team are doing. So I can't complain.
Yeah, I'm sure they've been through the ringer this week already, and it's only Tuesday. But yeah, a lot of news this week. Some of our fans are getting a little stir crazy about the loss and everything else with Jimbo being being let go. What are your thoughts on that?
I love it. I love every moment of this. I think every coach should go through this because it just shows if you're a good coach or not. And for Neil Brown, look, you sent me a message on Monday, I believe it was, during Neil Brown's news conference, and you said Neil seems, what'd you say, depressed or down? I don't know how you put it.
He was definitely a little lower than normal.
Yeah, it's because Jimbo got fired, and he's like, the one guy that they could let me go for is now available.
Yeah.
And I think that probably worries him, especially because he just got destroyed by an Oklahoma team that, in all honesty, isn't that good.
Yeah, it literally couldn't have came at a worse time for him.
Right. I mean, terrible timing. And then obviously, like the boosters aren't happy with the last 5 years. Like everybody knows that. And the fact is, like Neil Brown, if you support him or not, the one thing that you can look at and say is like he makes no changes. Like no one has left his staff. He doesn't seem to care about that, about that type of progress. And we're going to get into that in a few minutes because I'm pretty fired up about it. But yeah, I mean, I think I know I'm on the crazy side, but I don't think it's a bad idea for WVU to talk to Jimbo. Do I think that they should hire him? I don't know, but I'd talk to him. I think that it's worth seeing what he wants out of the program. Do I think Neil Brown should be the coach next year? Yeah. However, Jimbo wasn't available, last time. So it may be worth making a move here. We know what's going to come in, with Neil Brown, right? It's going to be 8-4 as the top. Like that's going to be a great season for him. Look, maybe you take a risk on Jimbo and you just crash and burn, but at least you took the risk, right? Like that's what Texas A&M did. They took a risk. It didn't work out for them. This isn't the SEC. Like we're not facing Alabama. We're not facing Auburn. He has the ability to be successful here, and he's a great recruiter. So, I mean, maybe he's the guy to turn this program around. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I can really see it both ways. You know me, I'm pretty positive when it comes to Neil Brown, and I don't get into the debates, and I don't like to put down coaches or players for the most part. Like, I just think that it's bad business as a fan. You're kind of shooting yourself in the foot whenever you start pointing fingers and really trying to make them like break them down when they're already having a bad day or bad week or bad season, whatever. So but with that being said, though, we've talked about this multiple times that coaches and players should be open to criticism, but there is an appropriate way to do that, I think. So I'm not ever gonna come out here and be like Neil Brown needs to be fired, stuff like that. But I think this is a unique opportunity with what's going on in the program and Jimbo coming available. And but we don't even really know if he's wanting to coach. He's about to get paid $70 million to sit on his butt for the next 10 years. So, I mean, maybe he doesn't even have interest in continuing his career. Maybe this is it for him. We don't really know. So I'm with you on the WVU entertain a phone call possibly, just to kind of see where he's at with his career and the ideas of coming back to West Virginia or like what's next for him. I do think that the flip side of the timing is that Neil Brown, regardless of what people want to say about our schedule this year being easy, at the beginning of the season, when we were deemed 14th by the media, they also voted on strength of schedules based on all of those things, and they came up with us having one of the hardest schedules in the Big 12. Obviously, those teams that were supposed to be at the top, like the TCUs and Texas Tech, like they didn't pan out. So our schedule looks very poor now, but I think that there was most likely expectations set before the year started based on what we knew going into the season that I think that Neil Brown's safe. But again, Jimbo really throws a wrench into it, I think, regardless of the outcome of the season. What would you say is your safe number? Do you think there is a number, or is it just purely whether or not Jimbo wants to come here?
You talking about like a wins number?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, I think it's 8. I think that's the safe number. If he gets to 8, then boosters probably settle down. Uh, but here's my thing. In all honesty, if Jimbo was to make the call and be like, "Hey, WVU, like I'm ready to come home," I don't think that there is a safe number. Like if he's the guy who makes the call,
Yeah.
that would be like pre Bob Huggins, like getting in trouble, like him calling the university and being like, "Hey, I'm ready." Obviously that doesn't work now, but before he came back, like he was the guy that they wanted.
Yeah.
I think Jimbo is the same exact way. Plus, look at West Virginia. Like we love hiring West Virginians. Like
Yeah.
we love it. It's a great story. He's from Clarksburg, which little known fact, I was born in Clarksburg, so you're welcome. Jimbo and myself are both.
He actually delivered you.
Both. He did actually. He delivered me, and thank God Texas A&M wasn't there to fumble me. But yeah, I think the safest number for Neil, and I guess to make this less clear, right now Neil is safe. The only way that he is not safe at 6 wins is if Jimbo makes the call.
Yeah.
But I think if Jimbo makes the call, there is no safe number.
Okay. I think that's fair. I think that, in my opinion, I always said getting bowl eligible this year was kind of the goal. And obviously, again, that was preseason. I think it's unfair to move the goalposts continuously like we have the whole year. Every game it was if he wins this game, we're gonna believe in him. If he wins this game, it just kept going every single week. And then we lost, and people lost hope again. And then it was like, well, if we win this game, like it's been moving the whole year. And I think that's super unfair. But I do think that Jimbo aside, I think he's already safe. I'm with you. The only way I think that there is a potential issue with his, I guess career continuing here is if Jimbo decides that he wants to come, and then I'm gonna say 7 regular season wins at least, and a bowl win is a guaranteed. I think 8 regular season wins with a bowl win loss. I think he's still in trouble.
Yeah, I would. I think that that's probably fair. I think the bowl. You're right. I think the bowl game is a big issue. But I'm just gonna be honest too. Like, I'm fine if they don't hire Jimbo. Like, in all honesty, I really am. But I think it would be athletic malpractice by Ren Baker to not make a phone call.
Yeah. Yeah, just
That's
like when they
I'm
were
saying.
hiring a coach, he came out and said that he had some conversations with people that were expected to have conversations with. But obviously they decided to go internal and then, finish the search next year. So I think you're probably right. I think I wouldn't be surprised if the conversation hasn't already happened at this point, or has been set up at this point. I don't think that it's to have the basic where we're at conversation, is foul play at the end of, like before the end of the year. So obviously, they kind of have to have a plan and everything like that as well. So, but yeah, I don't know. Neil Brown has my full support until he's not the coach here. So yeah, he has some things to fix. We'll talk about later.
Yeah.
But he is the head coach until we're told otherwise.
I totally agree. I'm not advocating for him to be let go.
Yeah.
But I am saying that WVU needs to do what is in its best interest. And the last thing I'll say is, you did, like I mentioned, you kind of said at the presser, you were like, yeah, he just seems a little bit down. You and I were fortunate enough to meet Ren Baker. I think, in all honesty, like he just seems like a pretty open and honest guy. If he was having that conversation or wanting to have that conversation with Jimbo, I honestly think he would tell Neil.
Yeah.
I think he would say, look, we haven't made any decision yet, but we're just going to tell you now, like, we're going to call this guy.
Yeah. So I guess one last thing, John, to touch on for this whole coaching discussion. Let's say, and this is obviously premature. There's still 2 games. There's still a bowl game. Things can change. Recruiting can change. There's a lot of stuff that could change before the end of the year and before next season starts. What do you think the football team needs to do moving forward, staff wise, if Neil Brown is still here?
Well, that's funny that you mentioned that. There's one guy on the. So you're saying what staff changes should
Yeah,
be made?
there are some contracts that are coming up. I don't have the specifics. I know there's 3 or 4 assistants or coordinator jobs that are coming up, and so I'm just saying in general, whether we have to pay them to leave or they're not retained or whatever. What are some changes that you think are necessary if Neil Brown wants to be successful moving forward?
I think he has to move on from Jordan Leslie as defensive coordinator. Again, I don't like advocating for people to not have their jobs anymore. Like, that sucks. Jordan Leslie, though, is underperforming at an alarming rate. So let's take a look real quick, because I've been on this guy's case, and you can testify to this. I've been on Jordan Leslie's case a long time now, just because I think that he has been schematically behind the times. Now, to prove that, I'll go over a little bit of these quick numbers. He became the standalone defensive coordinator in 2021, Brandon.
Yep.
So let's just look real quick. In 2021, they were the 5th overall offense when it came to points per game. That's how I'm going to judge it, because it's the Big 12. Points are obviously the biggest deal in the Big 12 because there's just so many. So 2021, they were 5th. 2022, they were 9th. 2023, they are 11th in the Big 12. Now you're thinking, 9th to 11th, not a big deal. Here's the problem with this. In 2020, when they had co-defensive coordinators, it was him and Adai. If you guys remember and go back, Adai's the guy who it was between him and Leslie on who was going to get the D coordinator job. And the rumor was that he went with Leslie because he was more familiar with him, and that the other rumor was that Adai was a West Virginia guy, so he'd want to stick with him. Now, the problem with this, Brandon, is I know that Neil chose wrong, because when they were co-coordinators, WVU was 1st overall in points per game defense.
Yeah.
1st overall. His defense, Leslie's, makes no adjustments. It hasn't grown at all during the season. He continues to have the same personnel looks that don't work. He has no rotation on the defensive line that works, and his safety play is atrocious, even though Neil is like, well, we don't really have anybody else. And that may be true, but you can scheme for what you have.
Yeah.
He doesn't. Leslie looks lost at the Power 5. It's clear. He shouldn't be the defensive coordinator. I'm sure you saw, like, there's this like screenshot tweet going around of his wife like messaging someone and being like, how do you like that defense now? I wish I could reply and be like, no, I still hate it. Like, it's still that bad.
Yeah.
So that would be a massive move for me.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I would tend to agree. Again, I'm with you. I'm not calling for Jordan Leslie's job. Just having a conversation of, maybe some things that we could improve on. And obviously the defense has been a pretty bad spot for us. And I don't even think it's really, there are some, deficits in personnel. This year specifically with depth in general, we just have a lot of injuries and young people, and but that at the end of the day falls on the recruiting. And if the defensive coordinator or the position coaches aren't doing a good job recruiting or looking impressive enough to get the recruits, then obviously that's going to be a compounding issue. So right now I would say definitely Jordan Leslie is a questionable candidate to be let go or not retained or maybe demoted. Maybe it's a situation where he just shouldn't be making the final say on defense. Maybe he's doing a good job with the position that he's specific to. And but obviously we've talked about this and we tweeted about it, but one of our keyed in people that we could fit right in there is actually Adai. I think it would be awesome if we could potentially bring him back home, and his contract's about to be up with Miami. this the end of the season. So it's like a perfect storm per se, and I think that that's another phone call that people should be making that have the power to do so. But what about on the offensive side? Is there anything that sticks out to you offensively that you think? I'll say this before we go to what you have to
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
I think that Neil actually has done a pretty good job offensively this year as far as play calling goes.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in the middle of the season where Garrett seemed healthy and felt like he could open the playbook up a little bit more. He was getting more comfortable. Obviously, last week isn't a great example. There was a lot of things going the wrong way for us there, but overall this year, I really feel like he's done all right. But with that being said, I do think that having a true offensive coordinator wouldn't be a bad look for Neil if he found somebody that kind of has, and maybe it's even Chad Scott. I mean, he seems to be doing really well recruit wise, developing the position with the running backs, and so maybe he even fills in there. But the big thing that I would like to see and haven't seen since Neil's been here is some quarterback development, and I think that we keep floating back and forth with Coach Reagan. He's got the job, and then he didn't have the job. They moved him around to keep him on the staff, and then Graham left, and now he's back to quarterback coach again. I just think that it seems like something isn't clicking there with the people that we've had, which obviously there wasn't even a great development with Graham Harrell here, but he was only here for 1 year versus Reagan's been here for I think 4 years or maybe the total 5. So I think that that's
Yeah,
probably a spot on offense that I would look if we are going to make some staff changes.
yeah. I think that that's fair. I am not an advocate for any coach at all, and this is just a preference of mine. A lot of people may disagree. I am not a advocate for a head coach to call plays. I don't think it's a good idea. I think that a head coach has so much responsibility that scheming offensive sets weekly doesn't make sense for them. They have too much on their plate. That doesn't mean that they can't be part of the conversation or anything like that. I just think it's too difficult. Plus, when you're the head coach, you're dealing with every aspect of the football team on game day. You're not just worrying about the offense, right? So I think that head coaches should give up uh, play calling. I don't think that they should do it. I just think that they have too much going on. And I think, in all honesty, Neil Brown has done a decent job. I think, though, that there is probably someone better out there to call plays. Do I think Neil Brown should be the head coach? Sure. Do I think that he has a good offensive mind? Yeah, he's pretty good. But I'm not sure that I would keep him as a play caller simply because his plays, he continues to do. I compare him to Zach Taylor in the NFL. Zach Taylor's the head coach of the Bengals. He's the same way. Like their play calling minus the first drive, because every first drive is
Yeah.
scripted. Like you script it to death so it looks great. But afterwards, you have to adjust and you have to make calls that are not predictable. Neil struggles there. I mean, his calls are very predictable a lot of the times, and he runs the same plays over and over again. And I'm not sure if it's because he just really likes those plays or if he's not noticing it. And that's why I always worry about head coaches making the play calls, is because they have so much going on. Um, so that would be a change for me, is to find someone, adjust to a new offensive coordinator who can make the play calls.
Yeah.
And you're right. It could be Chad Scott. It definitely could be.
Yeah, I don't see that being a bad option. Like I don't think you always have to go like off the rails and find somebody who, is a proven leader, because sometimes they just don't fit.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter who's calling the plays if they aren't, meshing with the team and with the other staff members and things like that. So Chad Scott seems to be a guy that everybody really likes.
Yeah.
Obviously he's good with the running backs, and we're generally pretty run heavy right now. So again, I don't want to ever let people think that I'm advocating for people to lose their job. Just a conversation, and John's the same way. We're just entertaining a conversation about potential future of the football program.
Well, I don't think anyone in that scenario would have to lose their job.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, Neil retains head coaching, right?
Mm-hmm.
He still does everything that he does now. He just doesn't make the play calls. He doesn't do the scheming. And I think that that's good for him. Like, you know, a head coach is a lot like the president, right? Like the president of the United States. That's what I compare him to. They start out like when they're first a head coach, like go back 5 years and look at Neil Brown when he first started. He's like this young guy who's just happy to be here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then fast forward to 2023. He's worn down. You know, he's been through a lot. There's people constantly calling for his head. Like, that's stressful. And I think if you can delegate tasks like play calling to a trusted individual, that one is probably better for his mental health, but two, I think it's just better for the team overall.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say he's like their president because 50% of the population wants him fired constantly.
Well, that's why I said people are calling for his head. Yeah. I mean, you know, I'm glad they don't do approval rates for head coaches. Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that would be not great for the morale.
He would go from 80% retainage a couple weeks ago to get him off the field at halftime at the Oklahoma game, real quick.
Yeah, that's that's for sure. All right, well, let's get into the review of whatever we want to call what happened last Saturday.
Ugh, I call it yikes.
Yeah, big yikes. So WVU goes to Oklahoma, and we really laid an egg. I will say one thing. One of our predictions was that Oklahoma was going to give up more than their average, which was, I think, their average last week for the season was like 17 points, and we did beat that number. We got the 20. So the bright spot is we're better than average against them. It's just they looked like an NFL team against us, so that didn't really help us out too much. Dylan Gabriel, I've said this before. I don't think he's like a bad quarterback. I just don't think he's that great. I think he's probably one of the better quarterbacks that we faced this year, but I don't think that he's spectacular. I don't think it's somebody who's going to go to the next level and be like, oh my God, we knew that guy was going to be good. I think he's going to, have his career here and then probably go maybe overseas football kind of thing or XFL or something like that and kind of fizzle out and go into his normal career. I don't think that he's a dude like they usually have on a quarterback at Oklahoma. And he kind of looked like he was a dude. But there was even flashes. I mean, you could see like when he had guys running all over us wide open and he was missing them by 5-10 yards. Like we're lucky that he wasn't a good quarterback. That was what I would say about it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd say we're lucky. I mean, the dude put up 8 touchdowns against us. So that's I don't know if that's luck or not. But I get what you're saying. It's lucky that he didn't go for 200 touchdowns at that rate. He was scoring at will, 23-36, 423 yards in the air, 5 touchdowns, 50 yards added on the ground with 3 touchdowns. That's a total of 8, people. When you give up 8 touchdowns to the opposing quarterback, you're not going to win a lot of games. And WVU has won 0 games this season where they've given 8 touchdowns to the opposing quarterback. So there's a statistic for you.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, what's really funny too is I would look at the screen and they're on like, let's say the 5-6 yard line. And we would stop them. Then they would spread the wide receivers out. Gabriel's just in the pocket by himself. And I would just say, this is a quarterback run. Right? And then he would just walk in the end zone. Going back to the defense, like how does that happen? Like I understand you can't cheat, but at the same time, especially later in the game when he already did it to you 1 time, 2 times, then a 3rd time, how do you not make an adjustment there?
Well, I think part of the problem there, and I'm gonna stick up for Jordan Leslie here, even though it's partially his problem anyway. When you establish the run like that, it's tough because they're also beating you through the air. So if you cheat up, they're just gonna destroy you, and that's why like those QB runs that he throws in there are usually run pass options. Like that's the options that they have there. So for him, like if you go back and look at the game, there's a couple times where he takes like a 3-step drop, takes a step forward, the defensive backs cheat up and he drills Stoops over the middle.
Yeah.
Because they cheat up. Like, that's the problem. And when you establish the run like that, plus you have a guy who's, completing passes at will, and you don't have, a secondary you can depend on, it's tough. I mean, at that rate. And I think that's really what it was. They could do whatever they wanted. Schematically, again, I think WVU struggled. I don't think that they made a single adjustment. If you go and look, Drake Stoops, 164 yards, 3 touchdowns. Go back and watch who lines up on Stoops the majority of the time.
Yeah.
It's Burks.
Yep.
The safety Burks. There's no reason why Burks should be lined up on Stoops, for one. And two, go back and watch as he's 10 yards off of him every time they line up.
Yeah.
They constantly played soft zone. They did not adjust. And when you do that, essentially what you're telling the wide receivers is find the middle of the zone, plant down, and just wait for the ball.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what they were doing. That's all they're doing.
Yep.
And I think that's what was happening. You just can't do that against a team like Oklahoma. And the last thing to add there is, you and I talked about it. One thing that WVU was going to have to do was that they were going to have to get home. They were going to have to bring pressure, and they were going to have to get home on the quarterback. They didn't do that.
Yeah.
They had 2 sacks the entire game, and I think both of them were pretty late in the game, or at least one of them was, and it really didn't matter at that point.
Yeah. But shout out Sean Martin. He did have his first sack of the season in November, which is just wild to me.
Another guy who should be performing better.
Yeah. And I'm going to sound really ignorant here going back to Drake Stoops, but he had a literal career day against us. Like, I think the number was like 30% of his yards for this year happened in the game against us in November. Like, that is absurd. He's not bad. Look, he's kind of in that same realm as Dylan Gabriel. He's not bad, and some days he looks really good. Dylan Gabriel, same thing. He looks good sometimes, but we made him look like Julian Edelman, like legitimately.
All I'm saying is, if you go back to last episode, I said the guy that they're going to have to watch is Drake Stoops.
Sure.
Because it was obvious.
Yeah.
It was obvious that is Gabriel's guy. That's the guy that he trusts.
Yeah.
He can make the play in the middle of the field. He knows he's gonna catch the ball. It doesn't matter. He doesn't care about yardage at that point. He cares about a completion to move the sticks. That's Drake Stoops. That's why he's so good at what he does. He's not a flashy receiver by any means, but he's a guy that just does the things he's supposed to do. And so, they had to shut it down, and they didn't. They did an honestly significantly below average job of focusing on Stoops.
Yep. Well, moving over to our offensive performance.
Yikes.
Yeah, again, that's just going to be the name of this episode, maybe. Yikes. Green, he's our guy. We love him. Mm-hmm. He was never comfortable. And
nope.
Whether that's preparation, like the coaches all said that they felt like they had a great week of practice, which that could be the case. But and this is back to another thing that just baffles me about the 10-year is it seems like every year we have this game. And it doesn't.
Oh yeah.
Like last year it was Texas. I think it was Texas where we just came out, laid an egg in the first half, and then like started to kind of come back in the second half, but still never got home. But it just I don't get it. I don't understand. They don't understand either apparently because in the press conferences they're all like, "We had a great week. We don't understand what's going on." We got there. We didn't really see any issues until we lined up for kickoff, and then it was like everything went wrong. Like, well, maybe. Maybe there's some preparation issues day of or something. I'm not sure. But regardless, Green looked super uncomfortable. He never really sat still and tried to make good throws. He was constantly getting moved around. And that was obviously the offensive line. They got dominated, which is the first time we've seen that happen this year. And I'm not really also sure where that came from because I know Oklahoma has a solid defensive line, but we also have some pretty solid guys of our own, and it just seemed like they had their way with us.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you this, and this is going to go back to what I said about Jordan Leslie. Uh, the reason why we struggled is that Oklahoma came out with a different look to start,
Mhm.
and we made no adjustments. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Like we never made an adjustment. We ran the same type of scripted calls that we know that they're going to run. That's just what they do. And at that point, when you're facing a team that when you line up against them and they are just better than you, which as a coach, you have to just be able to admit is like, these guys are just better than us, right? Just talent wise. You have to make up for it.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times on offense, that means creativity. There is no creativity in that offense. It is so vanilla and bland. Like people at a nursing home wouldn't eat it. It tastes that bad. Like that's the problem with this offense. And that's what you saw. I mean, Green looks uncomfortable the whole time because they're making no adjustments. There's no different rotations. Like they're literally watch the line. The line is doing the same thing over and over and over again and just getting destroyed.
Yep.
There's nothing. And to be fair, there's not a whole lot they could do. They could motion in a running back to play up on the line and be kind of the third guy, which is exactly what I said they should have done with CJ. They didn't do. They kept CJ as the lead back. We saw what happened. Yeah, he had a decent game, but it took 14 carries for him to get 70 yards.
Yeah.
So I mean, it wasn't like he was having a great day. He's just a big guy. They should be using him to protect Green a little bit more. And if he's struggling with pass block, that's a problem. You have to make those adjustments. Green 10 for 27, 2 touchdowns and a pick. We talked about last week. It was worse this week that he has his footwork is incredibly bad right now. And it's got to be because he's just so uncomfortable, but he's going to have to learn to be comfortable in spots where other quarterbacks can't be, or he's not going to be the guy moving forward.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to be like a jerk about it. That's just the difference between a Power 5 quarterback, a successful one, and a guy who's playing at Troy. Like that's the difference.
Yeah.
And and I think he knows that. I don't think I'm saying anything that that Garrett Green doesn't know. He has to be better.
Yeah.
He just didn't make easy throws. I mean, there were a lot of the times, man, he just throws that should have just been simple just look so hard for him. And I don't know. He's just so uncomfortable. I don't know how they're going to fix him this season.
Yeah, and to kind of take a little bit of heat off Green, when he did seem to get comfortable, and then we go back to the same problem that we've had the last 5 years, which is the wide receivers just aren't catching the ball. And not only are they not catching the ball, but you have Devin Carter completely give up on 2 tipped balls. One could have been a touchdown, and then the other one ended up being an interception because he was like, oh, didn't catch it, and just like stopped the play. But the other team was like, the play's not over until the whistle's blown. Like they kept going and were able to intercept the ball, and that's another example of why those should be called fumbles and not interceptions if they go into the hands of the receiver. But yeah, I just it was a baffling experience to say the least. And then you don't have 2 of them the more I guess like qualified players right now. You have Preston Fox and Rodney Gallagher, both weren't really used. I mean, Preston Fox was on the field at least. Gallagher, it seemed like they used him the one play and then they just never put him back in. It was weird.
I need an answer from the coaches on this. Does Gallagher just have bricks for hands?
Yeah.
Because the only time they ever use him is wide receiver around.
Yeah.
Like that's what they do. They put him in motion and hand it to him. And they do that 4 times a game. And it's the same play over and over and over again. And that's a problem, obviously. Again, it goes back to the predictability of the offense. It's very predictable. He should be out there more. He's extremely quick. You need a quick receiver who's able to run a fast curl route or a quick slant to get open, to make your quarterback more comfortable, to get the ball out of his hand as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
You don't have 4 and 5 seconds for a play to develop against Oklahoma. That's not how this works.
Yeah.
And Neil Brown knows that. They have to get better. That's just a huge miss on planning and strategy-wise. I mean, Preston Fox, there's no excuse why he's not used more. He is the most consistent wide receiver. I'll say it every week if I have to. He's the most consistent player on this team. He's the person who this team should be relying on more, and they continue to go to guys like Carter, which is fine. Carter is obviously a very athletic player, but I've never seen a player quit more in the fourth quarter than I have Carter this year, especially last game.
Yeah.
He just disappears. That guy could be a total game changer. And again, I'm not saying this to be a jerk. I'm saying this because I expect a lot more from a guy like that. And it's not just us that saw this. Everybody saw Carter quit on those plays.
Yeah. Yeah, I called it
obvious.
immediately. I mean, like the one in the end zone that he could have ended up catching for a touchdown. If you just look at him, he immediately just puts his head down and starts turning around, and the ball literally falls right in front of him. It's like, well,
I just don't get it. I don't get it, man. And again, I'm going to go back and question a little bit. Like, that's discipline, man. Like, that's what we've talked about throughout this entire season. When this team loses, you can look at the game film and go, yep, they were extremely undisciplined that game.
Yeah.
Go back and watch the film. They don't run all the way through the routes. They quit on Garrett Green. They don't catch easy, passes. Garrett Green doesn't get out of the pocket like he should. Just simple stuff that they should be doing very easily, or just Garrett making a quick throw, an easy throw, and being done with the play.
The
when
routine
he tries
short
to extend
plays
it too far.
are really where we're lacking for sure.
It's just undisciplined ball right now. And when you do that against a team that's very disciplined like Oklahoma, that's what happens. And again, this is where I'm like, do they make the call to Jimbo? Because I'm all about supporting Neil Brown and things like that. But I can't continue to look at a team. I'm fine with you losing, right? Teams lose.
Yeah.
But I can't stand watching the same undisciplined play every single week and being like, when is this going to be fixed?
Yeah. No, it's the I'm going to fix it mentality that Huggins had for the whole beginning of last year. That didn't really go over well.
Like when do we fix this?
Yeah.
When does this happen? It's like letting your basement starts to flood and you're like, don't worry, I'll have this fixed by tomorrow. You get back there tomorrow and it's like completely flooded. You're like, it's all right. Like, I know how to swim. It's no big deal. Right. But it's still your basement. You should have stopped the flooding.
I've got a snorkel. No problem.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, okay, we'll fix it at some point. Well, you're, 10 games in?
Yeah.
It should be fixed. Point blank.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's weird because there are so many things going not the way that he needs them to go, plus all the problems that he just has from a staffing perspective and personnel perspective. Like, there's a lot of things in it, but at the end of the day, there's no excuses. If anytime you have a job, if you're not performing, no matter what's going on in personal life or what other obstacles you have to face during your normal workload, like, you have to do your job. And at the end of the day, that's, you'll have to answer for all that. But let's move on. Yeah, let's move on to previewing our game this week against Cincinnati.
Sounds good. Let's go over to their offense real quick. Brandon, this is going to be a weird statistic, okay? When I looked at this, I said I didn't understand it. This is a BYU statistic. This takes me back to BYU. All right, so statistically, they rank 6th in the Big 12 in yards per game. They give up 443. 6th. That's pretty good in the Big 12.
Yeah.
Problem is, they rank 11th in points per game. So although they hold teams to 443, they're giving up 25. Brandon, what does that tell us?
That tells us to turn the ball over a lot.
There we go. It tells us that they turn the ball over, especially in the opponent's territory. And that's what we need right now.
Yes.
Let's focus on that offense real quick. Brandon, I don't know how much you've watched of them. I went back and rewatched the Houston game. They're a very, very balanced offense. 220 average passing, 223 rushing per game. You can't get more. You can't get more balanced than that.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, I don't know what you do.
Yeah.
What else?
I'm still baffled by this. 25 points a game, and you're averaging 443 yards.
Yeah, like I mean,
that's wild.
I just don't know. It's insane. You turn the ball over too much is what that tells me, which is great for us. When they started this year, so they have first-year head coach Satterfield. He came from Louisville. I went and looked this up because I was like, let's be honest, right? Like, I love Cincinnati. It's like a second home to me. But Brandon, would you leave Louisville for Cincinnati? Like that job in football?
Probably not.
I wouldn't.
Is there? There's
no doubt.
something tying him to Cincinnati. It's also
Nope,
just
here's
kind of
the
like
real
right over
reason.
the border, essentially, right?
Right. And you're moving from the ACC to a brand new Big 12 team,
Yeah.
right? Here's the problem. Satterfield was struggling at Louisville, it comes to find out. They were kind of on their last, bit with him. So he took the job in Cincinnati, brought his offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. So they all left, came to Cincinnati. It's their first year there. And when they got there were only 3 returning players on offense.
Wow.
So that's tough.
Yeah. And Emory Jones, he was at Florida, I believe, right? Previously.
I think so. Yeah, he's a transfer.
Yeah.
He came in and I have tagged him as, have you ever seen the movie The Longest Yard?
Yeah.
And they're the mean machine, right?
Okay.
Well, he's the turnover machine.
Oh no.
Because he's got 10 interceptions on the year. This is a guy that's been sacked 24 times, which is funny because he has 455 yards on the ground and 3 touchdowns. Like, he's a fast guy.
Yeah.
But he gets sacked a lot, and he loves to throw it to the opposing team. So that should be somewhere that we should be able to take over. We'll talk about that when we get to our defense. But initial thoughts there, Brandon. What about Emory?
Yeah, I mean, 15 touchdowns and 10 interceptions is not a ratio that you think when you think of college football. Maybe in the pros you might see something like that, like a 1.5.
Yeah, a guy
ratio.
named Mac Jones.
Yeah, Mac Jones.
Jones.
Yeah. maybe it's the last name. Wait.
Oh gosh, I didn't even think about that.
do you think this is like a Mac Jones instead of Emory Jones? Is that what we should call him?
Ooh, that's what we should call him.
A Mac Jones. What's his name? Mac
He's still
Jones.
He's still better. He's still better.
Yeah, I mean, I think some key players that we're going to see here. The running back, Corey Kiner, is 885 yards on the ground, 5 touchdowns, averaging 5.5 yards a carry. That's pretty solid numbers, this late into the season.
He's a bulky dude.
Yeah, and
he's a bulky dude.
Big dude. And then their leading receivers are Xavier Henderson and Braden Smith, who have 48 and 38 catches respectively. And
yeah,
it's again, it's like a high production offense with no points. It's just such a strange situation. So it's definitely not a game that I think that anybody in the program is overlooking, especially after last week, because the game after a big loss like that is always so up in the air. It's like, do the guys buy in or do they jump ship? And you definitely can't afford to have any players jumping ship against this team because they're things going right away from being a really good team with these numbers. So, yeah, I mean, I think the offense definitely could get it done if they can stop, the turnover machine, quote unquote.
I can't believe you called him that. That's so rude. You're right. This offense, it will take, I promise you, it will take 1 to 2 turnovers for WVU to win this game. You cannot, if this offense has no turnovers, we're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Because that's what this offense is known for, is heavy turnovers. They looked good against Houston last week. That's not saying much. Houston's defense has been struggling for a long time. They even struggled against us, but we struggled there too. But that being said, this offense can click really quick. It's something that can get up the field very fast. There's a guy on this team that I wanted to highlight. No one's highlighting him, okay? Look, he's my guy to watch. We'll probably be back here next week saying I told you so. I hope. Actually, I don't hope. I hope I'm wrong.
Jimbo hopes you're right.
5'7". Jimbo hopes I'm right. That is true. Jimbo's like, please have Big John be right about this. Jimbo actually called me and asked me to do this. I don't know if you guys know this.
He put this on your radar.
He actually told me about this guy. This guy's 5'7". He's a wide receiver. His name is Aaron Turner. Now, look, I got plenty of jokes, right? This guy's not a laughing matter. I watched this dude run up the field against Houston and thought I was watching in 2 times speed.
Yeah.
legitimately. I was like, holy cow. Here's the problem, though. He didn't have a lot of catches, right? Like, for some reason, he doesn't always end up with the ball. And I think a lot of the times as I was watching the game, Mr. Jones, the quarterback, tends to underthrow his receivers on long down the field passes.
That's like the normal speed ones. Imagine if the guy's running twice as fast as everybody else.
Well, I'm talking about this dude in particular.
Oh, okay.
This dude beat a bunch of defensive backs on one play specifically, and could have walked into the end zone and was underthrown by 4 yards. I mean, it was like, it was bad.
Yeah.
But he's so quick. I promise you, if they put Burks on this guy, it's game over. We will lose. This guy will have 300 yards, 5 touchdowns, and I don't know. He may just to show off, he might run backwards then forwards. Like, he's that fast.
Gonna have a Tavon 500 all-purpose yard game against us.
That's who he reminds me of. I didn't want to say it, but I'm glad you brought him up.
It's the initials.
I didn't want to say it.
TA. I mean.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no.
It's Austin Tavon.
Right. So he's a guy that I was impressed with on the film. Just, he doesn't have a lot of catches, but that doesn't mean he can't catch the ball. So we're gonna have to have a game plan there. Henderson and Smith both very good. To be honest, I'm not super impressed by Kiner. Like, I think he's a fine running back, but like nothing. He didn't jump off tape. Couple things that I see from this offense: they run a ton of pistol, a ton. They use it to keep the D off balance. They are heavy on play action, and I mean like play action even early in the game where they haven't even established the run.
Yeah.
So look for that to be a key factor. Quarterback likes to take off, doesn't go through his reads all the way, but that's just because he's so fast he can. But yeah, run a lot of pistol, a lot of play action. Look for it early and often. And to be honest, they're fine. But again, I'm just gonna say it, like we have to get pressure.
Yeah.
If we don't have pressure, Jones is gonna light us up, and that's gonna be sad to watch.
Yeah, we can't. What's really funny about about last week's game is I think that the PFF actually had us as like the most pressures we've had all year. We just never got home, which is more important.
Yeah, I don't know. I was looking at that too, and yeah, the pressures were high. But then I was starting to watch and look, and I was like,
I mean, they're definitely generous.
They were generous. I felt like a lot of the pressures were late. Like Dylan Gabriel already knew where he was going with the ball, or already knew he was going to take off. And if you watch too, like their line kind of collapsed backwards to beat the rush on a pass. So I don't know. Maybe that's what they generate as a pressure. I didn't see that very much. Early, I thought we'd have a pretty decent shot. And then towards probably the late first, early second, I thought, like we got nothing for them.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think we're going to have, right. I think we're definitely going to have our work cut out for us on defense, especially with the performances we've been putting up this season. Mm-hmm. But let's move over to their defense. Oh, they're pretty solid. I mean, they're ranked.
Yes, they
again,
are.
This is another baffling stat. It's like they're ranked 4th in the Big 12, but they have only 1 win in the Big 12. Mm-hmm. And they're only allowing 363 yards a game, but they're giving up almost 27 points a game. So like it's like the opponents are efficiently using the very little yards that they're giving up.
And what does that show us?
They're getting the ball on short field plays.
Yes.
Short field, yeah.
That's a problem.
Yep, that's bad for Cincinnati for sure. Great for us, but
great for us if we got to make them pay. But great for us.
Yeah, we didn't make them pay last week because we had that one like on the 40 or whatever from the punt return. But
no, Oklahoma took our lunch money. We didn't make them pay for it.
Yeah, they did, and we had to buy them dinner too.
So expensive.
But yeah, they like to play a lot of 3-man front, and they're really high on bringing the safety in for a blitz. They do a lot of things defensively to disguise their packages, and it's going to be another test for Garrett because they do a lot of things similarly up front that the Oklahoma does, and I think that's going to be another test for the offensive line and another test for for Garrett, because last week, he admitted it. Neil said it too. He just was seeing too much, and that was the game plan. I think was to get a quarterback with not a lot of playing time, a lot of starting time, and confusing him, and it worked. So I think that's going to be the same challenge this week. Is this defense isn't bad. They've just kind of been put in crappy situations from the offense.
Yeah, this defense is good. They had 6 returning starters last year. They've got a kid. So Ivan Pace Jr. was a linebacker that played for them. I think he's on the Vikings now, I want to say. Really solid player. I wanted him to come to the Bengals. That did not happen. But he has a brother on this team named Deshaun Pace, who is the safety. This dude is the guy that they like to bring on safety blitz, which I've been advocating WVU to do more, and we've still yet to see that. That's still another gripe that I have, but I digress. Deshaun Pace, 10 tackles for loss, sack and a half, and to go along with an INT. This is their Carl Joseph. Like, that's what I compare him to. He's the guy that, like, he's not the ball hawk type player, but he's the guy who is going to make you pay when you run the ball or when you take too much time in the pocket. They're going to bring him, and he's fast. Couple other guys to talk about. They have a guy named Jack Dingle. I picked him, 1, because I think his name is funny, and 2, this guy is what WVU should be praying that they can find in the next recruiting class, because he's not a backfield guy. Like, he's not going to make you pay a ton in the backfield. He's got 5 tackles for loss on the season, but he has 50 total tackles. This guy knows how to wrap up, which we're all praying WVU learns to do. They were great. WVU was great at it at the beginning of the year, and they just kind of forgot. Dingle didn't. Dingle's out there. You're going to have to, if you dingle a tackle in front of him, he's snatching it. That's his. Those tackles are his. Last guy, this defense, I'm telling you, relies on safety play. There's a guy named Byron Threats, and I promise you he is a threat, Brandon.
Where do they get these guys?
I know. I love this. I love that I can make.
Is that what we're lacking in our team? Is we just don't have any cool names? I mean, we got Beanie Bishop, and I mean, he is our best player. I think.
But he's our best player. Yeah. So I mean, get better names.
Oh my
Neil.
Gosh.
Somebody get Neil on the horn. We might be able to save him from Jimbo. God, Jimbo's such a good name, though. Oh boy, Neil.
Oh no, Neil.
Oh no, Neil. No. Anyway, yeah, Chad. Oh, dude, and you got Chad Scott on. Look, Chad Scott's great, but that name, man.
Yeah.
2 first names.
Oh no.
2 first names. You guys, Jimbo, he's coming. Anyway, safety Byron Threats is a threat. 49 total tackles, 2 picks, 5 pass deflections. He is their ball hawk. He's the guy that's all over the field. And you have to, if you're Garrett, you got to know where this guy is, especially when you're throwing the ball deep. I will say, this is a very similar defense to Iowa State. They attack a lot at the line of scrimmage. You can beat them down the field, but you have to throw the ball.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot rely on the run against this team.
Yeah.
They are, in all honesty, they are a terrible matchup for us on the defensive side. They're good at stuffing the run. They can be beat over the top because they bring so much pressure. It's going to be difficult for us to win this game if we're not throwing the ball. And if we're not throwing the ball down the field. It cannot be wide receiver screens, halfback screen. It has to be down the field.
Yeah. I mean,
so yeah,
that's
the defense for you.
Yeah, that's going to be, again, like I said earlier, I think that this is going to be another challenging matchup for Garrett, and I think that the whole offense is really going to have to come into their own and really bounce back from whatever they want to call that performance last week. Last thing we'll talk about, special teams. No, we don't have a lot of notes on this, but I will say that I believe Neil touched on they have a pretty solid punter. He's an Australian punter, which at this point I think everyone just assumes that your punter is Australian. Lanky guy, and he can kick
good day,
bombs.
Mate.
Yeah, I think he's averaging almost 50 yards a punt. So yeah, he's the real deal. So special teams is going to be another tricky one. If we are able to stop them, they're going to pin us, and we're going to have to prove ourselves on offense. So
I'm going to try and do this off the top of my head. I believe I'm not looking at notes because I forgot to add special teams. Sorry, Tim Lindsay.
Shout out Tim.
Yeah, shout out Tim. Shout out the real Brady, Phil Brady. Anyway, the kicker has not missed an extra point all year. I think he's missed 3 field goals. They tend to not kick a ton on, field goal wise. Punter is good, and special teams is pretty decent. I'm not going to say Preston's going to return one to the house. Watch, he's going to return one this game.
Oh my gosh!
Because
also, another guy has a cool name, Preston Fox.
Yep, that's why he's best player on this team. Anyway, but I do think that he could get us in a great field goal or great field position by returning a couple punts. Also, last thing I want to add, kick return has to be much better this week. It was atrocious last week. We didn't get to return a bunch, but I don't know. I'm just so disappointed in special teams this year that it just continues to be so lackluster. So going back to your initial question today, that could be a place that might need a change too.
Yeah, there definitely some consistency issues there. We have
and they win
right
games.
spots.
Special teams wins games.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Tim Lindsay told us that.
Yep, and I believe Tim and Phil.
Dude, Phil, we need to get Phil in here.
Phil Brady for life.
All right, well, that sums up our preview of this coming week's game, and next is our Impact Player of the Week. Who we got, John?
This was a tricky one because I thought there could be enough, or there could be a good bit. You had said initially Zach Frazier, which I agree, but I just think Zach Frazier brings it a lot of the time.
Yeah,
right. Like he's a great
player. It's expected.
Player.
It's kind of like picking the quarterback. Of course, he has to have a good game.
So he's like he's an honorable mention, right?
Sure.
Like he's a guy who, off topic, just want to let you know, is showing up in a lot of Cincinnati Bengals mock drafts. Just saying. So,
well, maybe the Eagles will get him. You never know.
Frazier to the Bengals confirmed is all I'm saying. Brandon Yates is going to be our impact player this week. The reason why is twofold. One, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I think Brandon is. I feel like I'm talking to you.
Yeah, you are.
So maybe I should say Yates. No, it's funnier if I say Brandon. I think Brandon has struggled this year. I do. I think that he's gotten some unfortunate penalties at pretty terrible times on drives. They've been drive killers. I think that he has struggled with blitz on the interior line, but I also think Brandon's a good player.
Yeah. So he's also been moved around a lot too, which I think he's been kind of a Swiss Army knife for us.
Yeah, that's the other problem is he hasn't established a spot.
Yep.
Right. Well, this is the game he can do that.
Yep.
And that's why I think he should be the impact player because you're gonna have blitz on the interior offensive line. We're used to seeing blitzes come off the edge, especially in college football. Cincinnati brings it on the interior. They're a line up and hit you in the face at the line type of team. Brandon Yates is a big dude who, when he has been successful at establishing himself at the line of scrimmage when it comes to a blitz. But I don't think he's seen it at this level in terms of, how many times it's going to happen over this game. Brandon has the ability to show that he's the guy who should be cemented in that guard position. But he's going to have to show it this game, and I think he's got to be the guy who is focused on the interior offensive line because I think Frazier, like I said, always is going to bring it. Yates has to be the other guy.
Okay, well, that sums up our Impact Player of the Week. Brandon Yates, just for recap. And let's move on to John, and I think from our feedback, everybody's favorite segment. And that is, this week we're going to call it Little Spreads with Big John.
I don't know. The first one I see you got written down is a pretty big spread.
Yeah, that's the joke.
Okay, I like it.
The first game we've got is Oklahoma versus BYU. Oklahoma's favored by just a mere 24.5 points.
At BYU.
Yeah, at BYU, which is, I don't think, and if you went back in the history of BYU, all the way back to the 1700s, you probably wouldn't even see a spread this high because they always win in Provo. So It's
That's
surprising.
Fair. Is it a night game?
Oh no, it's not. It's a noon game or early afternoon game.
Game over. I'm picking Oklahoma. Not even.
The Vampires will still be sleeping.
Even a thought. Oklahoma by 26.
Oklahoma by 26. You're taking it.
That's where I'm going.
Well, all I know is this: if Oklahoma comes out looking like they came out last week, they might win by 100. But not so fast.
Not so fast, my friend.
Not so fast, my friend. I think that BYU covers this. I've said this every single week, and I think I've been right at least one time. So I'm going to stay with this, and I'm going to say that...
I think I've been right on a pick before.
Yeah, I think I've been right at least one time. I think that anytime it's a 3-touchdown spread, don't touch it, number one. But number two, bet with the home team.
Oh, wait a second. Hold on. Timeout. You were right last week. Okay, I will admit this.
Okay.
But
I like
you violated that rule last week.
Did I?
Yeah.
Oh no.
Remember the was it the Baylor game that had a huge What game had a huge line where Tim and I said, "Yeah, we just don't like over 15."
Oh no. Oh no. You know, sometimes documentation of these types of things, like online recordings, it's not great for rapport. But nonetheless, I still think that this is it was 20.5. Thank God we have notes.
I knew it, and you picked it.
And I picked it, absolutely. That's because Kansas State's their real deal.
You were right.
Oklahoma's a bunch of posers. I don't believe in them. They got lucky last week.
God. I don't know. That's a whole lot of luck.
That's what they're saying in the locker room this week.
All right. I believe it. I'm still going Oklahoma.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm going to take BYU on this one. Next game we've got is Oklahoma State minus 6.5 versus Houston at Houston.
I'm so mad at Oklahoma State. I called Vegas last week.
Did you get a refund?
And I embarrassed myself. I told everybody to call Vegas. And I can't get over them embarrassing me like that. But, I mean, hold on, my phone's ringing. Hello? No, I don't want to do it. Okay. All right. Anyway, that was Vegas. They wanted me to thank them again for this line, which I will do right after. Oklahoma State minus 6.5 is a steal. I don't care what happened last week. It was a fluke. Houston's got nothing for my boys in Oklahoma. Oklahoma State minus 6.5. Maybe an alternative line minus 10. That's how well I'm feeling. I'll call Vegas later.
Okay, yeah, let them know that they really messed up on this. But go ahead and get that bet in before you have them make the change. And while you're at it, John, go ahead and double that down and put my name next to it. I'm going to take Oklahoma State minus 6.5 as well.
I like it. I agree.
Yeah, it's mostly because Dana Holgorsen just kick rocks. I'll bet against him every day of the week.
Hate him.
Yeah, the worst.
Hate that guy.
You know who isn't the worst?
All right, next.
Jimbo.
Next game. Nope. Jimbo's got a great name. God, Neil, why is your name so bad?
Yeah. Oh,
I'm just kidding, Neil. Neil, you got a great name. I can't wait to have you on the show.
That's true, actually. Next game, we've got Kansas State minus 8.5 versus Kansas in Kansas.
Who you got?
Could be the last home game for Coach Leipold, by the way.
Ooh.
Never know. Never know what could happen. Anyways, I've got Kansas State. I think that I'm beyond talking about all the things that need to happen for West Virginia to make it to the Big 12 game. I'm just going to back the dog that I think is going to win the race, and that is Kansas State. I think that they're the real deal. So Kansas State to the moon.
I like it. Again, pretty upset at Kansas because I'm pretty sure I made a phone call in that game too.
You did.
And I wanted to address that on this show because I have an excuse to make. And that is that Kansas backup quarterback that's been playing pretty well went down very early, and then they put in a third stringer who has never played, I think, a down of football in his life.
Literally, yeah.
Because he looked very scared the entire time, and so I'm not counting that against me, because it's an injury, right? Like, who would have thought it? Who would have thunk, right? I'm not making that mistake this week. Kansas State by a lot. I don't think this game's close. If Kansas pulls this out, it won't surprise me. Or if they cover, it won't surprise me. But Kansas State just seems to be the way more consistent team.
Yeah.
I like Kansas. I've said that all year, but they're just so up and down. And it's because of the injuries. Like, that's all it is. I think that they're a good team overall, but I got Kansas State covering.
Is Jalen Daniels ever going to play football? I'm confused of what that whole situation is, but
I just looked. I actually looked before we made this pick because I wanted to have an aha, got you, Brandon. But he's coming back, and this is why I'm picking Kansas. But no,
but not so fast, my friend.
yeah. Bean's probably going to be the guy again. I don't think he has enough for Kansas State.
Alrighty. Well, next game up, we've got Texas 7.5-point favorite over Iowa State in Ames.
In Ames, woo-wee. Let's see. Is Ewers back? I asked this last week too.
Yep, and they announced on 3, announced that he is coming back next year. He'll be back for 2024 season. I didn't even know he had eligibility. I thought he's already used all of it, but apparently he's available for 2024. So he will be back next year.
I wonder if that will affect Arch Manning. Wonder if he'll leave.
Oh God, I hope so. West Virginia needs a quarterback.
Jimbo?
Jimbo's
probably already on the phone with him.
Jimbo was on the phone with him. Yeah, I was gonna say.
Jimbo's called Peyton. He's already called Eli. He's like, hey bud, let's get this boy over here.
That's right.
To West Virginia. They're like, Jimbo, you're not the coach. He's like, I already made the call. Neil's upset. Did you see his last presser? Brandon Williams will tell you all about it.
That's why he was so sad.
Yeah, we're pretty close with Jimbo on this show. Anyway, I got Iowa State covering. I don't think that Texas has enough. I think Texas probably wins. I don't think they have enough to beat them by 8.
Here's what I need to see happen here. Is I need to see Texas lose, and here's why. Because I want to.
Well, I'd like that.
I want nothing more than Oklahoma and Texas final season in the Big 12 to have them not playing football in December for a Big 12 championship.
That'd be cool.
So yeah, so I think I told you this before. I think Iowa State, of the remaining teams, I think that they still play Kansas State this year, or did they already play them, or they don't play them at all? Probably got lucky.
I don't know. They only got one more game.
Yep, and they they already played Kansas State. They played them.
Oh yeah, they lost, didn't they?
No, Texas.
Or no, they.
Is this correct? Was that game last week?
What?
It wasn't last week. November 4th. Am I dumb? Okay, that was the week before that. 2 weeks ago. Texas beat them.
Yes.
I was looking, I'm like, what do you mean they played last week? Yeah, so they won in overtime barely. So yeah, I think of the 2 teams remaining, which is Iowa State and Texas Tech, that Iowa State is by far the only team left that I think can beat Texas, and I think that they do it. I do an alternative spread here and say, or just do the money line. I'm going to do the money line, I think. Iowa State money line.
That's fair.
Or if you like spreads and want to parlay, then parlay them beating the spread. But next up, we've got Baylor versus TCU. TCU 12.5-point favorite in TCU, which I feel like, did they have like 12 home games this year? I feel like every week they're playing at home.
They bought the schedule.
They must have literally had 7, because I remember when I went to TCU game, I think that was their 4th home game out of 5 games, something like that.
I mean,
everyone was complaining about it.
Sounds like they've had a lot then. Oh
yeah,
they've had a lot. I don't know if you can hear this, Brandon. This is
hello.
This is me.
Is that ringing?
Just dialing a phone number real quick. Oh, hey,
Jimbo.
Hey, real quick. No, Jimbo? No, okay, you're not Jimbo. Okay, just making sure. Just want to thank you once again for the lines here. This line's atrocious. I don't know who hurt you, but I hope they do it again so I can get some more beautiful lines like this. T's and P's, brother. That was Vegas. I just got off the horn. I just wanted to thank them one last time for this. There's no way TCU wins this game by 13.
Yeah, no way.
There's no way. There's absolutely no way. I'm slamming Baylor. I don't know who made this, but I think that they mixed this up and thought that this was like early TCU, where everybody just guesses that they're good.
I think they thought this was the basketball game. Did they mix this up?
That could be true. That could be true. Well, Baylor's better than them in basketball.
Not last year.
Yeah, true. Baylor's not losing by 13 points.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Baylor covers this. I don't think that they
get on the horn, call Vegas.
Yeah.
Thank them.
And we do need to have a disclaimer. Once again, first episode, if you go back, I did have a disclaimer, so it's out there. We're covered. But we're not liable if you make these bets. We're just telling you as betting professionals.
No, we're not.
Wait. Hold on a second.
We do not know what we're doing. If you go back and listen, I miss a lot. Brandon misses a lot. If you are dumb enough to listen to us, that is on you. Okay? We're not telling you to make these picks. We're saying that these would be ours. This would be our bet slip, our imaginary bet slip. So if you want to come along for the ride, cool. If you don't. But we are not telling you which way to do things. We're just saying this is how we see things.
Exactly. So those of you who texted me asking about refunds last week for John's picks, we got nothing for you.
Yeah, and about Brandon's the week before. Well, see, we're all bad. We're so bad.
Second
but anyway,
to last
get on
game.
The horn, call Vegas.
Yeah, we're telling you exactly what to do.
No, don't do Brandon. Do not undermine the disclaimer.
All right, so second to last game we've got here is UCF versus Texas Tech. Texas Tech is a 2.5 point favorite. John, are you going to call Vegas 3 times tonight?
I'm not calling Vegas on this.
You don't think you're calling Vegas? I think I'm calling Vegas on this.
I'm not. You are.
I think I'm calling. Ring, ring. Hello, Vegas.
Uh-oh.
What's that?
They on the horn?
You said. Oh, this wasn't wrong. You said Texas Tech 2.5 in Lubbock, huh? Okay. All right. Well, go ahead and put me down for UCF covering that, probably by 10 or so. If you want to create an alternative spread, or just give me the money line, whatever's better for me. Because this is free money. So go ahead and just mark us down.
Again, we're not claiming that this is free money. Brandon is just saying things to make himself feel better about his pick. But I will say Brandon's pick is probably right. I'm going UCF as well. These are two teams I just don't trust. Like UCF, great last week, but like has also put up plenty of duds. Texas Tech, I don't know what's up with them. They're like, they are just so weirdly overrated, like, but then randomly show up. So I don't know. These two teams are mind-boggling, but I think UCF covers this.
Yeah, Texas Tech just can't finish a game. I don't think they've finished a game yet this season.
They can't.
And UCF showed last week that they can shut down a successful run game, which is what Texas was doing. And I just think that this, I mean, I know it's Lubbock, so that's kind of the wild card in this whole thing is that it's Lubbock. I think this is neutral ground, or at UCF, it's probably a giant spread for UCF, but I still think it's not enough. So UCF for sure covers, I think.
Yeah.
And our final game, the one that you've all been waiting for, Cincinnati at the world champion Mountaineers. WVU, 6.5 point favorite. What do you got, John?
Look, I know I talked it up. I talked about how good this defense is. Okay. I talked about how this offense could turn it up. I talked about Garrett Green being a little lost. I talked about Neal having a dumb name compared to Jimbo. Okay, I've said it all tonight.
Accurate.
But you got to get on the horn for this one, brother. You got to get on the horn. You call Vegas. You say, Vegas, thanks again. I appreciate it. You underestimating the West Virginia Mountaineers, because there is no way. And on God's green earth that Cincinnati covers this. There's no way. WVU wins this game by +10. I'm calling it now. They're going to win by more than 10 points. It's not going to be close. Zach Frazier, Yates, Nestor, all them big boys up front will control the line. Vegas will be crying by the end of the day because WVU, all of their fans, will have taken all of the Vegas money. Again, disclaimer, not telling you to make this bet. Just telling you. Just telling you, as an irrational person, WVU will win by 10 points.
I love it. I'm not going to make the alternative spread here, but I will say I do think that WVU is going to win. I think that we have a lot to prove after last week. I think Neil's going to be fired up. I think the team's got to be fired up. And I think of the last two games, I don't think this is the one that we drop another egg, or lay another egg rather. So I think WVU covers. I think that's a safe pick.
I like it.
Well, that's all for us.
I like it.
For episode 5, John. Anything else?
Well, just one more thing, Brandon. As always, let's go!